Hey, welcome to another great episode of Tampa Fishing Outfitters Live Fishing Report. Myself, Captain Travis, Captain Jason, and Captain James here bringing you the report from Tampa Fishing Outfitters. So we're going to cover a couple different things today, I guess, guys. We got three different fishing areas, I think, that we've covered over the last week or so. So should be a good report from different parts of the bay. But other than that, just fighting the red tide,
Ain't no red tide in the bay.
Well, I'm saying keeping it at bay. We hadn't seen any red tide.
We're not fighting it. Everybody else is.
The more people that get on the boat in their motor, point them out towards the Gulf, and everyone turn on their motor at the same time. Shoot it out.
Yeah, prop wash that
prop
thing.
Wash it.
So if we lined up a boat along the whole coast and we just romped them, especially if they're Mercury, son, that stuff's gonna be in Mexico.
We just need all the people from Weed 9.
Gotta have Towboat US waiting.
Take everyone from Weed 9.
I couldn't help it.
But I've been from the northern part of the bay to the furthest most south part of the bay, and I have not seen any red tide, particularly in the last week since we did the last show. And so I've been sort of all over the place, and believe it or not, I've really found some pretty water, especially up north. A lot of that water's tannic anyway, but the water's clean. It's real pretty water, and did some sight fishing today, so that was fun. So all that being said, Tampa Bay is clean. For those of you that are concerned, I've got a lot of text messages and calls. I know you guys have too, especially our clients that are coming in over the next few weeks. And as of right now, Tampa Bay is good and clean. A lot of good fish.
Today.
We keep praying that it stays at bay and more towards the Gulf, and generally it does. Generally, it doesn't invade the bay quite like it does the Gulf beaches and areas that are closer to the Gulf. So we're hoping for that. Yeah. And in the meantime, we're out there catching fish, man. Hopefully, some of those fish move this way.
Well,
some clean water.
and we don't want to sound like it's not a big issue.
Right.
It's a huge issue. It's just not an issue in the bay.
That's right.
I think that's the biggest problem that I see is there is a I had a customer been on me since I started guiding. He booked a trip in October, and he's like, "Hey, man, what's up with the red tide? You got a bunch of dead fish?" He lives in Ohio.
Yeah.
And that's the perception. It's the same thing with the oil
because they're looking at it as Florida.
Yeah.
Has,
Or they see, they'll see Sarasota, and they automatically think. So I feel like it's probably a good business move for us to promote that we are not in red tide in the bay. And I think the more the local captains that can get that word out, the better we're all going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody should do some kind of Facebook live feed or something to their little groups of people that they know, saying that the Bay is okay right now. Because right now we're going to get from a business standpoint, we're going to get overrun by red tide talk nationally, and I'm getting calls every day just like you guys are. So
yeah, it's part of the conversation. Every time a trip comes up, it's a question that gets asked. So
yeah. And how many people, my question is, how many people are not booking charters or going to hotels or anything?
Not making the call.
They're not making the call. So that's I guess the point I'm getting. I don't want I feel really bad for the Sarasota guys, for the Boca Grande, Fort Myers. I mean, I don't know if they even have an out. I mean, are they doing trips inside Charlotte?
From what I understand, and we sort of talked about it last week, Jason. I know you weren't here, but I talked about the similarities between, Charlotte Harbor and Tampa Bay, the way that they're estuaries and the way that we've got, freshwater rivers that dump into these estuaries.
Right.
And I talked about it last week, and to my knowledge, fresh water is not something that promotes the growth of red tide.
Yeah.
And that's if that was the case, Okeechobee we run over with red tide.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, you got a different scenario down there with the blue-green or the blue-green algae and all that. I think that at some point they do collide, and there's a connection between them, but they are two separate things in my opinion.
Totally.
And from what I know and from what I've read from the guys that are reporting on it, that it is two separate things. Somehow may be bound, but where I was going with it is that in Charlotte Harbor, I know a lot of those guys are fishing back up in the in the harbor a little bit. Traditionally, this time of year, tarpon fishing generally is pretty good, much like it is in the upper parts of the bay where these post-spawn fish and even like resident fish will sort of move back into the estuary going into fall. Saw a lot of mullet today, especially in the upper parts of the bay, which says to me that water quality is fairly decent. Those mullet generally, will take a hit if there's some low tide because they'll be up in those shallow or some red tide or bad water because they ended up in that shallow stuff all the time. So that was all good to see. And so to answer your question, do they have an out? I think a lot of those guys from a business perspective and from a fishing perspective are just moving further up into the harbor and doing sort of like what we're doing and, making do with what they've got that's still good and clean water to go fish. So, and I have seen some reports. I don't know. I haven't talked to any of my buddies down there, but certain areas I've seen little, blurps of like Stump Pass Marina. I saw them post a video a week or two ago that said they had some clean water in. They had some snook back in the marina there by the fuel dock. So whether that's true or not, I'm not there, but if that's the case, if that's what's going on down in that area, then that's a push in the right direction.
Good sign.
Because that Stump Pass is right by the Gulf, and they were affected pretty bad there in Inglewood. So hopefully that whole situation is the low part is done, and we can start looking at a recovery and hoping.
But this is an annual thing.
Things,
it's not. This kind of comes up every year. I think it's just worse.
Well, we had. We had the hurricane that did a ton of rain last year, and we've had a ton of rainfall this year. We had rain in May, 3 weeks of rain. I mean, you guys remember that? That was freaking horrible. So we just had
getting afternoon showers.
Oh, the rain is crazy right now. It rains every day at my house, and it's raining inland. So it's just
got comments.
We got a lot of rain. So. I'm sharing, so I can't.
Okay. No, you're cool. Guys, our bottom computer's out, so if you got some comments, James is going to be the comment dude tonight. So if you got
a few
something
people kind of posting
you want to ask us or talk about,
says that the Verado is probably the best motor on the market.
Where'd that come from?
Debatable. It is a good motor. Then you've got Douglas asking around Marco. Don't know much about Marco Island.
Nope.
I like the Verado comment.
Yeah, Verado comment was a good one.
That should make you feel good, Jason.
So having fished in between my trip to Louisiana, all the trips I've ran prior and since have been that Upper Bay area, and I know there's been a few. We're having a harder time keeping bait alive up there. But it has,
does that have anything to do with red tide?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm getting people that are bringing it up. Man, it's getting ridiculous up here.
Look at your live well. Do you have it set up right?
It's the live well set up, but it's also just the low oxygen, high water temperature, low salinity. It's a combination of all those things. It's summertime.
And you've been complaining about your well in particular. Holding bait before the red tide was a major issue.
Right.
So I think a lot of that is it's
overstuffing, choking them out.
Yeah.
We're
100%.
we're going down to like 200-300 baits instead of the 700-800 we're maybe used to.
We need to get take a look at your well, man. We gotta get that thing set up.
We'll get that thing straightened out, baby.
I'm working.
I don't lose bait.
I tell you what I did in my skiff when we were out in Louisiana is I sort of prepared for it, so I pulled wires and everything for it and had a switch for it, but I added one of those bubblers. Because
you talking about the oxygen or
just the
regular?
oxygen, just the 12-volt DC.
Oh, the one I got.
Like the oxygen.
Yeah.
You know, it's called Mr. Bubbles, or it's made by Metal Marine Products.
Yeah.
And I was really hoping that Keep Alive was going to come out with something like that. I'd actually talked to Tom, which we may touch on that here in a second as well. But I had talked to Tom sort of over the years, dealing with him about coming out with a 12-volt DC bubble, maker or oxygen, deal. And he sort of bounced the idea around this, that, and the other. And I don't think there was really any market for it because there wasn't anything unique you could do with it. But what he does have, and that I do have, is his air stones. So you can go to the Keep Alive website, keepalive.com or keepalive.net, and they've got a big, round, circular air stone. And it's got suction cups on the bottom of it. But he told me, he cornered me one day when I was up at his shop and gave me the whole spiel about how they've been designing these stones with ceramic and different products. And he actually hired like a chemist or somebody, like that level to actually get in there and like start playing with different stuff to maximize the bubbles and the size of them and the atomization of the air and all that jazz. Where I'm going with it is you can take a regular stone and set it next to one of these stones, and it's like 3 times as much, and the air is a lot finer. They're a little pricey, like $40 for a stone.
I couldn't get air to come through mine.
You got to let it soak. You got to let it sit for like 5 minutes sometimes.
With a regular bubbler?
Even with the regular bubbler, the blue one. You got to let it sit and soak.
No, that one I didn't have a problem, but I'm saying I took his stone on a regular bubbler, and it was like it didn't have enough.
Did you use the white one?
Yeah.
No, they're different. That one's for oxygen. They're set up for different pressures.
Okay. That's probably why it didn't work.
Yeah, so he's got 2 stones. He's got one that's a white stone. They look identical the way they're set up.
And this is from Keep Alive?
It's from Keep Alive, keepalive.net. And he's got a white one and he's got a blue one. The blue one is for your regular oxygen, your air.
Okay.
So like a marine metal products, bubbler, AAA batteries or whatever, you hook that to that, or one of the 12-volt DC models, you would hook to that. And then the white one is for oxygen, like we have on our oxygen tanks, pure oxygen. And he was explaining to me that it has to do with the PSI levels that the stones are sort of tuned to. So it's funny you say it didn't work because he was telling me they wouldn't.
Oh, it won't. I tried it. I had the white one from my oxygen system. I said,
it won't work on a regular bubbler.
No, it won't. It's like it's too fine of a stone.
It won't push the air through there. So that's kind of funny. But anyway, so that may be a solution to some of these guys that have low or they're fishing in areas with low oxygen. You can actually just put a bubble machine on your live well. And the way I did it was I have a bottom feed inlet on the bottom of the well, and I put the bubble stone like about 6 inches in front of it. So the flow of water actually mixes with the oxygen and sort of comes up to the surface of the well. And it works really well. But in Louisiana, we needed it just to keep our fish alive.
You're not pumping in.
All we do is run the bubbler.
You already got your skiff set up. So what I did with my bubbler, so West Marine makes this, it's a kit that you buy that you can put, like, it screws into, like, your insert in your live well with a hose.
It's a Venturi. It's a little 90-degree
system. Yeah, and it comes, so what I did on my Pathfinders, I've got a recirc that it's not a Keep Alive. They put a regular recirc, which is pretty much pointless.
Mine's got the same.
So their fitting, they've got a, you can unscrew the black fitting. It's not a spray fitting. They use different fittings. It's like almost like just like a water spigot type fitting. Well, you can unscrew them. Well, that Venturi little elbow fits right into there, screws right into there, and then I ran my hose from my bubbler on top of that. So now I'm pumping air, my oxygen air, and spreading it through the well, and it works just like the Keep Alive pump would. So, but if you probably don't have, I was saying if that would even work better if you had the air pump on your recirc with that pumping around the well.
And yes and no. I mean, the only other reason why I would say no is just for tournament fishing. And like when we'll put a redfish in there or 2 redfish, all we run is the air. There's no water moving. There's no. It's just the bubbler. That's it. So
yeah, but this would push it around the well. I don't know if it matters. It would push that air.
I think in our area for a bait situation, I think you're right. I think it'll make a difference. I haven't really loaded the well yet, simply because I really haven't caught a lot of live bait in the skiff.
Yeah.
I'm actually fishing on it tomorrow, so I'm going to fill it with bait. So I'll kind of let you know. But the way I've got it set up, man, it pumps a lot of water. It moves a lot of water. And I think it'll hold bait pretty well.
Good.
So. But
we had some comments here. Somebody says it's not the fresh water. I'm assuming the red tide. Well, it kind of is, because the fresh water runs off through the grass, and you get pesticides mixed in with the water, and then it runs in the water. So it kind of does. I mean, I'm not saying the fresh water makes red tide happen, but the stuff that runs off the roads and the ditches and the streets kind of affects it, from what I've read. Somebody said there's some red tide in clear water. What was the other comment here? Ty kind of broke it down too. The nutrients from the blue-green algae is making the red tide worse. It's like feeding oxygen to fire. So yeah, I've read a lot on it. I still wouldn't claim to be an expert, but basically runoff water. Yeah. Runoff water, which is, you're going to have runoff water when you...
Not fresh water, runoff.
Runoff water, like coming through the ditches, coming from your yard, you know, the stuff that gets flushed out with it, from what I understand, is the issue, which is why Okeechobee is
you've got all the farmland that's out there with nutrient-rich vegetation and from fertilizers, phosphates, nitrates, and all that stuff. When the rains happen, it washes that stuff down into Lake Okeechobee, and historically went across into the Florida Everglades and the watershed through to Florida Bay. And when they built all those residential developments down through there, or whatever they did, they sort of disturbed that natural flow that had been going on for years. And so there's side effects to what we see, where they're now bringing that water and exiting out towards the Gulf.
They've been doing that for years.
And then they've got issues that they're seeing down in the Everglades, where that water that used to come through that watershed doesn't happen anymore, and they're affected. So there's a lot of stuff going on with this.
I read an article from the Miami paper today, and I read through it. I tagged Dan. I should have tagged you in it. Mike Anderson shared it. It was pretty interesting that the farmers don't want to sell the land, which makes the farmers to look instantly bad guy. But as I read through it, they're like, you need to back this with science, not like an empty theory.
Yeah. And
I kind of agree. It's like, you want us to sell you all this land, but it didn't sound like they were going to build basically like a reservoir tank, this big reservoir tank. But the farmers are saying that that's not going to work, and then we're going to sell this land. And so it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a long haul. I don't want to say we need a drought the next few years. We need it to slow down on the rain. I mean, we need to figure out a solution. The last few years, if you look at it, we've got a lot of rain in the winter. It's the last few years more than typical. And then we got a lot of rain in the spring this year, late spring. Yeah. And then, of course, we get our summer stuff. So that's causing them to have to dump additional water out of Okeechobee, the runoffs, all that. And I think that's where – so it all does stem from water. Now, that's not saying it's the cause. So I don't know, man. It's pretty depressing. End result is we're all going to suffer.
Yeah.
State of Florida is going to suffer because – they can talk about big sugar and money. You want to talk about money, look at what the economical impact is going to happen when people don't go to resorts. They don't go fishing. They don't go to the beaches.
Right.
I mean, it's huge. It's way beyond, I would think, what that big sugar down there is bringing in. So we'll see, man. It's depressing. I do try, people always want to push the blame to the big companies, and a lot of times deservingly so. But I think everybody needs to take an open approach about it and look at all sides. And when I read that article today, it was like, I think they need to try to sell the land, but I also think that the government needs to give them a good resolution,
a good plan,
backed up with good science. Yeah. Just like saying we're going to close. It's no different than saying, we're going to close redfish, Travis. Why? Well, we think that this, that, and this and the other. Well, no, give us good hard science why you want to close redfish. I'm just using that for example.
And I mean, there sort of is. I mean, there's guys down there. This is not like you said, this isn't a new thing. This has been happening for a number of years now. I mean, even 2-3 years ago, I remember watching aerials or seeing aerial footage of where the Caloosahatchee comes out there, and just that south end of Pine Island down there by St. James City, where grass flats, they have sequential years where it's just killing everything.
It's receding.
Coming out of there. Now, a lot of that's probably just fresh water. I mean, just the fact of fresh water dumping over that seagrass, I'm sure doesn't make it thrive.
Right.
But they've been fighting this issue for a number of years now, and I think what you can look at it as a good thing or a bad thing, but I think now it's became national, headlines, and so to look at it from an optimistic standpoint, well, now we've got some people that maybe have some reach, that there's a bigger group of people that have a concern about Florida and our waterways to make a voice and get something done about it.
Because
it's always been the small group of guys down in Southwest Florida that have been fighting about this stuff on the East Coast and the West Coast. And like I said, the good thing is we can take of it is we're getting some national spotlight, and hopefully, like organizations like Captains for Clean Water, those guys are out there, hitting the streets, doing the thing, and getting stuff, hopefully getting done. And so, do what you can to get involved with any of these organizations. And the number one thing, and I was just talking to some clients about it the other day, is do the little part you can do.
Yeah, anything you can make a direct impact.
If you're out there fishing and you see a water bottle floating, pick the water bottle up. If you're, out there and you see balloons float, just do your best. If you see a rope tangled up on something, go ahead and get it off. If there's corks on the mangroves, don't touch the mangrove, but get it off.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's all those little things, and I'm not saying that's red tide or anything, but we all focus on one thing at a time, and a lot of times we don't pay attention to it, and nobody gets recognized until it's too late.
I tell you, the big problem after reading this article was I'm going to throw a number, and I could be high on this, but I thought they said there was 2,000 jobs or projects that were proposed to fix this years ago. There was 5 that are current, and there's 0 done.
Yeah.
So and it's basically it's taken a back seat. What does our government historically? What do? They wait until it hits the fan to say, we got to do something, because when it's not a problem, like, it's a back burner, let's shove it to the side.
Yeah.
Well, and so to me that seems to be the biggest problem. They knew that something needed to be done, but we didn't.
I think in general in life, most situations are handled more reactive than proactive.
Yeah.
And I think that's why.
Safe to say that.
It's evident, or can't be untrue. But the point is that, like I just said about the little stuff, I mean, there's always things you can do to prevent things from happening later, and most people don't consider it until it's too late.
Right.
To take care of it. And so, that's why I say now, idle into areas that have grass flats. Pick up trash. Don't dump anything else. Let fish go. Fish care. All that kind of little bitty stuff that some people just don't really pay much mind to. I mean, all those little things in the long run will make a difference.
Yep.
Well, one of the problems now is we need a quick reaction, but we don't want a bad quick reaction. Like do something, spend billions of dollars, and then go, well, that didn't work. So they really got to tread carefully, but it's got to be fast because there's issues. Clay asked if there's how's Cockroach Bay. Cockroach Bay is fine. Ton of fresh water, a ton of fresh water. I was down around the port, which is typically pretty clear water throughout the year, and it was dirty.
Yeah, I was down there a couple days ago, and
it was really dirty.
It was murked up pretty good. There was right there in the middle of the day, we had some decent sunlight, and closer to the island, it got clear. But the second you got away from any of that, current, it was mud, murk.
Yesterday I was out, and everywhere I went, I mean, you could see, but it had that tannic look, just ton of fresh water. So that's just rain. We've had a lot of rain. It's been raining every day at my house. Everything's soaked. It's gotten progressively worse the last 3 weeks. I'm not gonna bother washing my truck because it rained when I left at 3.
I haven't washed my truck in a month.
No, it's like, what's the point, you know?
I got mine washed the other day, man. It's all clean. I got the seats steamed.
Oh, so
my truck's
what
cleaner
color
than yours?
actually is it?
Huh? It's tan underneath all that
Actually,
dirt.
it was like a gray. I think it was white at once.
Upper Bay Tannic.
Yeah,
it's custom.
Yeah, baby.
What'd you do? Back it down the ramp?
I blend in.
Did you back it halfway down the ramp? Wash it off?
He's got a water line on there.
That's it, baby.
Hey, Bob, Charlene.
Hit the bilge pump.
He's asking, and he's asking where we catching bait tomorrow. Now,
bait's on the flats.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think the markers are about non-existent. I've been getting some thread fins out there as needed.
Post up on a shallow flat where you've got birds diving. The one thing I'll say, and you guys can chime in too, but I've noticed that if you're just in an area and you're gonna look to find some bait, just look for the fry bait, and the better stuff is around it.
It was tough yesterday to get bait.
And we kind of talked about it last year and talked a little bit about it, but if you get out there, kind of just after sunbreak or right when the sun's breaking, and you see the bait, especially if you've got some better size bait, don't use a lot of chum, because the fry bait will sort of just fly in and you'll just be swarmed with fry bait. And I noticed that the other day. I was just throwing a little bit of chum, got some decent bait, and then I just started sort of chumming heavier and just loaded the well. But it was because of that I was actually able to target some of those better baits because little guys roll in and it's nuts.
Yesterday was a challenge. I got some decent bait, and the pinfish moved in. Then the tide was low. I got a little bit later start. I actually had to go across the second bar down south, and then it was weird. I was in pretty shallow water, and all of a sudden I just started raining good bait coming at me. But it took me about an hour to get bait. This year has been challenging for summertime to get bait. I mean, it's usually nobody wants to fish the summer, the old timers, because it's hot. I'm like, I don't care about the heat. I can roll out there, bait's 30 minutes, fishing's good, and that had been the case this year. It's like, if the last month and a half, I'll find a spot where it's great. I got like 3 days, and then
it's gone.
Then I don't know. It's just like the pinfish move in or something. It's usually not the case. I mean, usually you roll up and you're good. But I mean, there's plenty of bait on the flats.
I've been loving the pinfish.
Oh, actually,
I've
been using them.
Those 3-inch, 2.5 to 3-inch pinfish, especially fishing. It happened to me the other day, and sort of the opposite of the situation I just talked about. I pulled up there in the morning, didn't really have a whole lot of time, loaded the well, but it didn't really have a lot of fishable baits for me. For Jason, that was like, dude, I'm ready. I can go tarpon fishing with those things.
Popping cork.
Put a popping cork on there, I'll sling it 400 yards.
So maybe get next to you and show you what popping
cork. But so I'd caught a bunch of like small baits, man, and I slid out about 20 feet and started chumming again, and just started wearing out like the 3-inch pinfish, and was chumming with the white bait and fishing with the pinfish. I mean, it was. I think we had a better bite fishing with pinfish than we did
with the white bait. Are you cutting the tails on those, or just leaving them home?
I just let them rip. Especially you'll notice too, like further in the day, if you don't have a good well, you'll notice those pinfish will even start to get a little sloppy, a little tired. And so with the smaller ones, man, I just let them rip. I think those vibrations really help.
I've been using a lot of pinfish,
which work well too.
I've been wanting the pinfish about that big, because I've been doing quite a bit of grouper fishing this year. And doing pretty good on it. We got one keeper last Monday, but
a lot of them fish are like 22 to 23 inches, man. It's nuts.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of like just unders, but we're getting some snapper on them. We're getting some snook on them. Occasionally we're getting a tarpon here and there. So I've been using a lot of the pinfish, but it's weird, the only thing that sucks right now is I've been wanting some threadies some days, and I got to go to 2 or 3 different spots to get the bait I want. So, which I might end up doing Friday, because I want a lot of both, kind of. So, it's been a little tough because the thread fins have been pretty easy. I've been throwing my humpback 5/8. I think it's 1.25 inch stretch.
Yeah.
So I've been getting
the sinks like a stone.
It does. Yeah. It does. And I've been getting some white bait when I throw that occasionally.
Yeah.
There's a couple times where like I smoked, but it was big white bait.
Yeah, I'll say it's some hog legs. I got them the other day too.
Yeah. So, but that net goes down.
Yeah.
But when you pull it up and the bait's a little on the small side, it sucks.
Yeah, no bueno.
It sucks. Yeah.
No
well,
bueno.
It's there. You just got it stuck in every hole.
I got to throw a 14-foot mullet net in Louisiana catching bait for these guys for the offshore stuff.
Yeah.
And man, those things they drop. I was like, this net's so light.
Oh,
as
yeah,
I'm
dude.
feeling it.
Yeah.
And boy, you just watch it disappear. It's not like the quarter 3/8
No.
mesh.
Did Louisiana let you down, or was I on point on the?
No, man, it was on point. It was unlike I wish I could have done the inshore side of it.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that was missing. But
I thought about it, dude. It was
Yeah.
close, man. As we came through, we hit. We were coming out of Louisiana, getting into Mississippi, and I said, "Oh, beers ought to be getting close,
right
man."
by.
And I told my cousin because we were actually going to stop in Hopedale and fish Sunday before we came back because that's where the championship's at. And man, I tell you, from daylight to dark, pretty much every day that entire week or 8 days,
You were fished out.
we were fished.
Even
man.
Travis
So
was fished
we were
out.
sort of
That's saying something.
just tired.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just kind of beat down, and he had to get home, and I had to get some stuff done. So we ended up rolling. But looking
you
forward to
oughta
get back
just
out
fly
there
in,
in October.
We just booked our place, man. Dude, if you want to fly in for a couple days or a day,
I probably will next time.
this year we got a trailer with like Sleep 6.
Yeah.
Got a place to stay. So I got my guy that sponsors us and my other buddies coming in like they did last year, but I mean we don't catch a ton of fish because we're kind of don't want to beat the fish.
I always
out,
tell
but-
people that if they want to come fish with me out there, they do it the week after.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
but it's still
I
we'll
brought
catch
some buddies out there. I brought my buddy Sean out there, man, and
It's tough.
he was all jacked up. And so we're going through these areas, and it's like, okay, there's a 40-incher. Yeah, you can catch him. So he catches one, He goes, oh, let me get that. No, can't catch any of these for the next 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Just going through there because you
Well,
just don't want to sore lip them, man.
That
So
was the good thing about fishing Venice is that
there's so much big fish that it's fun.
well, and we had already decided that we wasn't fishing Venice, so when we pre-fished, we caught like 50 reds
Yeah.
out there on the jetties, and then we were sight fishing like 43 inchers.
Yeah.
When you're fishing like in Delacroix and all that, you're not going to hit them numbers. I'm not a local there, but we don't. But they're like quality fish, but you also don't want to beat the ponds up
Yeah,
because
There's a
the
difference
fish you're
between
looking for.
scouting and fishing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Talking about that all the time.
we'll always pick one or two and kind of just
hey,
see if they're gonna eat
Yeah.
and kind of size them up. But
yeah,
other than
you
that,
oughta,
man.
if you want to fly in, man,
I will.
we got an extra place there. Stay for a day or two, and the airport's like 30 minutes away. We'll drop you off, pick you up.
Yeah.
It's flight's not bad. It's like an hour and a half flight. I need to book my flight, but I'm leaving Monday night. So and then the tournament's Friday, Saturday. But looking forward to that. We need a good finish next
I'll
month.
be rooting for you.
Yeah, we'll hopefully be there. Travis, are you doing the championship this year?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We're gonna go back to.
It's out of Hopedale this year?
It's out of Hopedale.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So we're gonna. They just moved the Punta Gorda event to Ruskin. We didn't fish the Clearwater event, so we went to Homa to fish our first qualifying event, and then Ruskin will be our second to qualify to go to the championship.
Cool.
So really don't have any shot at like team of the year or anything, just because we're only going to fish one tournament in each, deal. But we had a tough tournament day in Homa, so it really wouldn't have mattered anyway, even for in the Louisiana series or division.
Right.
But,
Yeah, we need.
Always love going out there, man. I always say that the tournament is sort of the icing on the cake. Just being out there and
getting away from it all.
Getting away from baiting hooks and throwing nets and sight fishing redfish for a week. That in itself is, the best part of it. And then, me and my cousin, we always enjoy fishing together. It's sort of a bond we have. It's growing up as kids, and so it's always just a good time, man, to get out there. And
it's a whole other world, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a place that you spend a weekend and you might see 3 or 4 tournament boats, and then come tournament day, there's 110 or 12 boats that launch for the tournament, and it's just amazing that everybody can get out and
that place can sustain.
Every corner has a
150
winner
boat.
on it. It seems like you just got to catch them.
Here, I just don't feel like it can. I guess they've had it. I don't know if they've ever had 143.
Well, here's
boats,
the thing: it's hard to
150.
sustain 100 that field here, and then also the number of boats that would just be on the water aside from the tournament.
Yeah.
From what I saw, Louisiana, most people that are fishing there it's part of their life. They're either guiding, tournament, they have some connection professionally to it.
Yeah.
And see a whole lot of
recreational
other
boating,
right?
and fishing.
I know it's big, but it's just such a vast area.
It
that
is
it's spread out. You don't see them, so I know they're there.
And I think in Venice too. I think in Venice, not to interrupt you, Jason, but I think in Venice, it's more of a destination place.
Yeah.
Once you get into Venice, you're sort of out in the cut.
Yeah, that's it.
There's only one reason you're in Venice, and that's to go fishing.
Only
or
one.
Gator hunt.
It's definitely not for the accommodation.
You get into areas like
or the Wi-Fi,
like Homa,
or
or even like Hopedale area.
Yeah.
There's like there's more of a population there, like a recreational population. So, even in Homa, I mean, you'll see at the boat launch in the morning, 5, 6 recreational guys putting their boat in. Most of them got little mud motor boats, and they're getting back up in the swamp and doing their thing. But it's just a different breed. The locals, the way they fish, and
there are a lot of guys are trout
to,
fishing in the lots.
They like to trout fish.
Yep.
They start seeing these tower boats and these high-performance tunnel hauls and all this.
Yeah, like what?
Here come the tournament guys. I can only imagine what they're saying at the bar.
A lot of them are just kind of like, what in the world is going on?
What are these jack wagons doing?
You definitely stick out like a sore thumb in some of those places when you show up.
Yeah. Is that why you got a black wrap?
You got black wrap, black tower, black console. Yes. The Midnight Rider, baby.
But, it'll be a fun trip for sure. But I'm starting to see our tarpon disappear.
I saw some tarpon today.
That's where I've been wanting to go was north, and I think
really,
I know where you went.
Stay away.
Yeah, stay. In fact,
I just haven't had time. I've been working on my business.
Well, in this particular area that I was in, it wasn't actually up where we were talking about, but it was a particular sandbar, and I was coming down the sandbar on the outside of the sandbar, and I saw like 3 fish just sitting, like almost probably like 10 yards apart. And I was like, man, they look like sharks. They look like little black-tip sharks. And I kind of came by, and I could just see their shadows. And so I kept on going. Well, I'd come back by that spot like, 10, 15 minutes later. They were still sitting there. I said, what the heck? So I spun back around, got on the drift, and just kind of drifted across. And it was 3 tarpon. They had to be at least 100 pounds apiece.
Yep. Just
sitting there. Didn't move. I drifted right over top of them. I flipped like a little DOA cow at them. One spun around and took off, but
look at this guy.
I think those fish are kind of pushing their way and made that northern movement. In some of the areas that I've been fishing them, the numbers have sort of fell off. There's still fish there, but the numbers have definitely fell off. And traditionally they'll kind of, I think some of those fish split and go back out into the Gulf and do their thing, and then I think a separate portion of those fish sort of.
And I think some of them other ones will bounce back on the moon phase.
Yeah, it all depends. I mean, you get fish pushing that 100-pound mark. I think they're that mix between big migratory breeder fish or resident fish. And the one thing that I always say about the whole tarpon migration in Tampa Bay and even in Charlotte Harbor about tarpon is, I definitely think there's 2 populations of fish in most areas.
At least.
You have a resident population and you've got a migratory population. And the number one reason why I say that is visual evidence. Go to Big Bend Power Plant in January.
Yeah, there's tarpon all over.
There's 200 tarpon sitting at the power
plant.
Pretty
big ones.
Yeah. And they're not 40, 50 pounders.
No.
A lot of these fish are pushing that 100-pound mark.
There's some folks I talk to regularly that fish tarpon all winter long.
Yeah.
And catch tarpon.
I've hooked them in the first right at sunup on a coldest morning. I mean, them fish have to run in and out of there. So there's only one way in and out. It's just a matter I think they do it like right at sunup. I've hooked them on shrimp. Just fishing shrimp. I've hooked them multiple times. Of course, you hooked the wrong fish.
We've hooked quite a few of them on cut bait. The problem in there is
it's catfish.
If they turn and go the other way, you're hosed.
Either that or
that's a lot of times that's where they go. They actually don't go out. They go, whoop, I'll just go back in the ding.
And fishing cut bait in there.
You're going to get sharks, stingrays.
I mean, you could easily pull 20 catfish in an hour.
No
easily. Without chumming. So
good old buddy of mine, old man, he fished the point of the power plant there for the longest time. I used to ride my bike to the point down there, and he'd be sitting down there, and he fished with catfish. He'd catch 8, 9 catfish and sit out all night and fish dead catfish in that channel. And his whole thing was cobia. He loved catching them big cobia, and he used to catch the crap out of them cobia on catfish. And I've never hooked one. I've never actually really even tried it, but I heard that big tarpon will suck down a catfish.
I've heard it too.
No problem.
We're using big catfish for tuna.
Really?
Yeah, that was one of their beta choice is
live or just
live. Yeah, they like them live because when those bonita and blackfin get frenzied, you can't get a bait 3 inches down without one of those other fish getting
it. So they won't touch the catfish.
So they want a big catfish that is too big for them. to get down to those yellowfin. But yeah, I was thinking about that. I've used catfish for cobia before there.
Yeah. I've never really done it just because I've always fallen back on ladyfish or mullet.
Sure.
There's always ladyfish running through there, so if I'm going to cut bait up in that area, I'll generally throw the jig or have the guys throw a jig, catch 5 or 6 ladyfish, and then go do some cut bait. But I'm definitely looking forward to doing some of that this year. If the bay sort of keeps on traditionally like it does in the northern parts of the bay, and I'm not just talking about up past Gandy, I'm talking about the northern McKay bays and up towards that way. If that keeps going like it normally does, we should have a really good winter up north fishing. So I'm kind of excited about that, especially with the new boat being able to get into some of those areas.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping to actually do some. I want to get some of the smaller tarpon this week. I've got trips lined up through Monday right now, so I'm actually getting pretty busy for the next few days. And I got Monday off, then I got Tuesday, Wednesday booked, and then I'm on a cruise for 3 days. So pretty busy till go on a little mini vacation. And so I'm gonna try to do some juvenile tarpon. But man, the problem right now is a lot of the areas of juveniles are in a ton of fresh water, so it might be an end of the day. Let's give it a shot because I might lose all my bait from fresh water. Because I can tell you I can't keep bait more than 20 minutes by my house, and I'm 5 minutes up the inlet.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of fresh water in that river right now.
Yeah. Lot. So, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of with as much rain as we've had, it's kind of going to screw me up a little bit. Versus last year, it wasn't as big of a deal. So I don't know. We're going to see what happens. I'm going to fish south tomorrow because I got to pick up out of St. Pete. Probably going to run in the bay, fish Joe's and that area there, just because of the lower water I'm going to have, and I might hit some stuff in St. Pete, but I'm not. I'm
going to run a skiff tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, that'll be your first trip out of it, right?
It'll be my first trip out of it. So
cool.
We're going to run and get some bait on the flats and just go pond hopping. We got a little low tide in the morning.
Yeah.
Going to go check some areas and see what we can do, man. So I'm excited about that. I've got a few more trips lined up. Actually booked a couple wintertime trips. We looked at some of those negative lows. And
I'm book one with you.
Yeah, excited to do that, especially in our area. You know, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I remember being younger and having a John boat and taking as far as I can get, then hop out, then wait.
That's what it brings back is being able to get into some of these areas and safely. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about, running across dirt and mud for a mile to get to an area. There's ways to get in, and you got to pick your time. But when you can get into those areas safely without damaging things, especially when you have a boat for it, you can really get back there and sort of have the place to yourself. So I'm excited about that.
Me and Brian, when we won that tournament, had some extra cash, and we were really leaning towards getting a Texas boat. I mean, we were kind of had it thought out, and we backed off on the deal. It was going to cost us quite a bit, even with getting deals on everything. But I really like the idea. I just, from a business standpoint, I couldn't put it together. I was like, I've never been like, wow, I need to get in there, and I can't.
I think like that. I think more like I want to get back there.
When I have gotten in areas, I don't.
I'm just
don't produce very well
much
in that
bigger,
low water.
Think outside the box guy, man, and it's kind of just like that's kind of been my thing. Even when I started guiding, like I just, it's funny. Like you and I used to never see each other fishing. We always, you were on one side and I was on the other, or this or that, and I've sort of always stayed away from everybody. Just tried to make that sort of. Even like on a Sunday when I'm running down the South Shore, I'll just keep driving and driving. There's 5 or 6 spots I want to hit, and I'll just keep going until finally you'll find a stretch where there's just nobody at, and that's where I'm going to fish.
I don't know if that's happened this year.
No. Well, and point being is that's becoming more and more difficult to come across, and for me, having a different style boat, a little bit set up just a little bit different, is going to give me just a little bit different option on those days.
Dude, you won't hear nothing out of me. I just ain't made sense of it. I didn't say I didn't want one. I just said they ain't made money sense out of it.
Yeah, I mean it's
Hey, if you've made it work, you got a deal on the boat with. I think one of the killer deals, well, besides you doing it yourself with that boat, is that you got a tower that worked with the boat because the tower you're looking at $4 or $5 grand without rigging, and that's at a deal. So that right there, getting it with the boat for what you pay for the haul, you're ahead of the game. And the fact the boat, the haul itself didn't. It wasn't like it was a rebuild. It was
No.
needed to be.
I gutted it and just sort of rebuilt it the way I wanted it. You know,
Yeah,
but
but
there
you
was
didn't
no
gut it like Brian's.
no. There was
Brian's
no,
got a shell sitting there. I'm like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah,
looks
there
like
was
a lot
no
of work.
stringer up rebuild. It was
Yeah.
pretty much deck up.
Yeah.
And had to do a little bit of repair and some fixing and some strengthening up in some certain places. But for the most part, yeah, it was a rebuild and good stuff, man. So I'm excited.
We got a question here, Nathan Mentier. We've all been on redfish lately, so how are you guys approaching redfish right now? He's specifically want to know where to look. So let's talk about some ideas to give him.
Well, this weekend you're going to have a low tide, so
Mhm.
early start. I've been hitting the bushes real hard. I did run across a small school yesterday. We got a pretty – I think I got the biggest one out of the school.
Yeah.
I only caught one, but it was a stud. I lost 3 of them, and then the school was on the run. But the bushes have been pretty productive. I haven't caught a ton of reds. I haven't fished a ton the last week and a half. I did some fishing, but it's been good, but I wouldn't say as good as I typically would say.
Yeah.
I would drop, if he can start early and get bait and fish that out going, then as the tide drops, just drop
Move
off
out.
with the tide
Yeah.
to the potholes and sand holes.
I tell you another good thing this time of year, and I've done it several times. I don't do it as much as I used to, and maybe I will on some of these trips that I run on the skiff. Is get out super early and throw artificials for about the first hour.
Before you
Get
go.
on some of these edges of these bars, some of these high flow areas where a lot of these fish will stage up at the tail end of that outgoing tide.
Mhm.
That's all along the south shore of Tampa Bay. I mean, you got an inner and an outer bar, and most mornings those fish are going to be from the outside bar to the inside bar. And a good way to do that is to beat the time of going to catching bait and wait until the sun comes up if you can see it and all that kind of stuff. Is get down one of those bars and throw some top waters or throw some soft plastics, and you might be surprised at how many fish you can catch before most guys even have bait.
Exactly.
And once that sun gets up a little bit, you can catch some bait and sort of work that angle. But that early morning bite's only going to be 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah, first little bit of sun.
First little bit of blue,
Mhm.
and boats start running around, especially on a weekend. It just sort of shakes those fish up, and it's not quite like it is, an hour after dusk or dawn, or dusk, whatever.
That's a good approach. I mean, it really depends on tide. I mean, for me, is we don't usually pick up till whatever time 8, so we kind of lose that. But I just go with water height. If the water is dictating that they're going to push up under the mangroves, and that's where I'm going to be. But as soon as it starts to roll out, they're really not going to hold in there. They're going to move out somewhere. So
yeah, I mean, I think any of the trees right now, I have seen some good reds caught. I have caught some good reds. I'm starting to see that push of our fall push.
Mhm.
I do not feel like it's going to be anything like it should be. I think we're going to have a little run. I think we have to, work the bushes hard and do some different techniques to catch them. I will tell you a good option too if you want to get an early start. And I don't do it, but I'm going to tell you to do it. Is get shrimp.
Shrimp.
Don't
Absolutely.
even bother with white bait. Go out there at 6. Gets light at 6:30. Hit your spots. We should have a high water. I don't know exactly. It's about 8
They
o'clock.
are high this morning and through the weekend.
Yeah, so you're gonna because we had an outgoing
through the weekend.
yesterday.
Yeah.
So you should have a 45-minute tide difference.
Mhm.
So if you get out there at 6, fish that high water way up in the trees, and just flip them shrimp underneath the bushes. You're gonna catch catfish. You're gonna get pinfished up. But a buddy of mine, he does it like. He'll catch like 20 reds, and I'll go to the same area with white bait or pinfish, and
That's definitely
I'll
been
catch
a big
one or
topic
two.
lately, those shrimp.
And it's just, it's some of me getting out of. But I'm doing other stuff.
Yeah.
So
I think the same thing too. Like we were in an area that I know has quite a few redfish, and I know quite a few guys have been catching redfish in the area, and quite a few guys have been going there consistently catching fish. And we were in there a few days ago, and even the week before that, pulled in there and caught a handful of redfish. And I had 4 guys the first time I went. I had 2 guys on live bait, 2 guys on cut bait. The cut bait, I mean, hands down, beat live bait all day long. And so we sort of went to cut bait, and actually talked to another buddy of mine that I know fishes in there, and he said that the fish weren't in there. And I was like, well, we caught like 6 of them. And he's like, well, we saw them swim by. He's like, but we couldn't get any of them to eat. And It was just a matter of fishing cut bait.
I
think part of the reason is like if you're not a kind of an advanced live bait fisherman, especially fishing under the trees or needing the bait to be under the trees with a live bait, it's hard for people or for an inexperienced angler to do that well. To do that, consistently keep the bait in the strike zone.
Yeah.
With a cut bait, I can take a bait, fire it up under the trees where it needs to be, and say, don't reel that rod.
And shrimp, you can do that too.
Exactly. And so that's where I was sort of making the same or the parallel to is that, it's not just the shrimp, but you can use, cut mullet, cut pinfish,
you throw a sardine or a pilchner
anything
in
like
there,
that.
It's going to be under there for 60
keeping
seconds.
The bait
then you
where the
cast
fish are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that bait's going to swim around. That's what they do. So you're absolutely right. The problem with cut bait is the catfish are just horrendous right now. Dude, I mean, you're like
we definitely caught our fair share of catfish amongst those 6 or 7 reds or whatever we caught.
The catfish will kind of beat me down. I'm like, all right, I got to do something else. Like about 5 in a row. And I took my wife fishing last Friday, and she wanted to go tarpon fishing. I was like, all right. And so I said, let's go. I said, they're close. I just went and got thread fins. I got thread fins. I loaded up on thread fins pretty easy. So I didn't have any. I just went thread fins. And some storm start. We stayed out for a few hours and went and had lunch because we dropped the kids off for school, and she actually took the day off. And so we went up. I said, let's go hit some flats north. And we got one or two nice reds. Mm-hmm. But, man, the catfish.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was just cutting thread fins and chucking them up, just like you're saying, underneath the tree and just let it sit, stick it in the rod holder. And, but, man, the catfish were brutal. Like, it was just like.
We did a catfish tournament the other day. So the folks I had on the boat, we had caught quite a few snappers. We got, some fish for them to take home for dinner. Caught a bunch of mackerel. They wanted to do a fish fry. So we had, probably caught 20 mackerel. I think we kept 5 or 6 good-sized mackerel and a handful of snappers. And I said, well, we're going to go try to catch some redfish. The wind picked up in the afternoon, so had a little bit higher water, so we went fished some bushes. And just like you said, the first 4 baits were catfish. And the cool thing is you get those clients on the boat that are
like
cool.
Catfish.
That are cool. Well, not necessarily like catfish, but we'd already had a pretty good trip.
Yeah.
And so they made the best out of what we had. And I said, listen, guys, the one guy had said, and he'd been fishing with me a couple times. He goes, man, is there redfish here? I said, yeah, there's redfish here. I said, we're just going to have to weed through them, And so they made a sort of a game out of it. And they just, kept catching catfish. And all of a sudden, redfish showed up. 2 or 3 more redfish. And then, so I think we ended up catching I don't know, man, probably a dozen catfish, 12 catfish to,
3 or 4 reds.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
1.
And
we went through that.
But when you look at it, and maybe it's just me being optimistic, but as a guy that is out there fishing, I'm going to have more fun is catching them catfish than sitting and waiting for those 3 redfish to bite over that hour instead of catching a couple different catfish.
I think I just hate screwing with them taking them all.
I hate it too. And
but you're right. You're right.
I'll move. There's times where I will move, and you read your clients because the guy that says, hey, man,
those are no good.
Yeah, we don't want to catch catfish. You're sort of okay. You know, I get it. You kind of run out of time. But,
or if you tell them,
make the best out of the
let's
situation.
just work through these catfish. We're going to catch some reds, and you don't get
and then you don't get one.
That's
what I say. You got a 15-minute buffer there. You can only catch so many catfish before Red Dog better.
They've been bad.
Come to the party.
I mean, I was the other day I did the same deal, and I was using live bait, and I'm like, catfish. Like the start of the trip too. So I ain't caught it, and I knew I just got to bump around. I'm like, about 4th catfish. I'm like, all right, let's move. I
gotta go.
I'm floats catching them.
I've noticed too, and I don't know if you guys have, but it's gonna maybe sound basic, but the catfish. It seems like when the catfish are really bad, the other fish really aren't feeding that well.
No.
And then in the same spot, when you start catching quality fish like snook and redfish and trout, generally you don't catch a lot of catfish.
The catfish this is my time to shine.
Right.
Yeah.
And so and over the years I've tried to kind of correlate that to okay, is it slack tide? Is it the top of the high? Is it the bottom of the low? And really I just think it's that intermittent period between tides sometimes is when those catfish, it's their time to do their deal. Yeah. And any other time, I think the game fish get in there and sort of take over. But the amount of catfish schools that I saw today.
Dude, I got 100 of them off my dock every day.
100 is I'm talking thousands.
Yeah.
I thought they were mullet. And so I kind of drifted over top of them, and it was a bajillion catfish.
Yeah.
That's
and
not
so
uncommon.
I don't understand. I guess they're breeding this time of year.
Maybe.
Spawning, because several years ago, maybe it was 2 years ago, I was fishing in Cockroach Bay, and it was really hot. We were on some redfish in the back of Cockroach, and we were catching catfish sort of in this pothole. And these redfish were just moving through the pot. They weren't sitting there, but if you kept the cut bait in that hole, you'd catch some redfish. And I think the catfish were living in the hole, but the redfish were just sort of passing through, you know. And we caught so many catfish, but every catfish I pulled in, you know, I'd go to de-hook them, and they crapped out these little silver or clear eggs, like perfectly round little like marble-looking things. And I didn't even notice it till my customer said something. Goes, "What is that?" And there was like 10 of them on the boat. They're little clear, like round marbles. And I was like, I don't even know where that came from.
Yeah.
And the next catfish, I de-hooked him. They shot out of him. I'm like, what in the heck? And so I think this is the time of year maybe when they're doing their deal. I don't know.
It makes sense because
everybody knows.
Yeah.
Chime in.
Any catfish?
Is this catfish bumping time?
Yeah. We were getting it on.
I was up there last year where you were today, and coming down a flat, and I'm seeing these birds work, and there's just all kinds of commotion. I'm like, oh, it's jacks. Maybe there's some reds mixed. I'm gonna go take some people to see what that's all about. Throw a bait in there, hook up, and thinking, all right, this is great. Hey, you get a bait in there. You get a bait in there. Brought them in all catfish.
Jumbo cats.
I mean, schooling, frenzied catfish, and they're slobs.
Oh yeah.
But that's how it is up there. And then in the winter time, you'll go. I spent some time there fly fishing last winter, and you'll pull up to these. You'll see a redfish tail, and around there's just catfish everywhere.
Catfish all over.
And they're in pods, man. They love it up there.
We were getting them, because when we fish a lot of those corporate events out of Gandy, that's when I really get to fish up there. It's just such a trek.
Yeah.
To never leave fish to find fish kind of deal. And so, but when I'm over there, I always go that way. Very rarely do I come across and fish my home waters when I fish out of Gandy or that area. And this past spring, we were up there fishing an event, and we were fishing like 5 to 6 foot of water, fishing trout. We needed to complete our slam, so we were trout fishing. Yeah. And, dude, I was chumming up these catfish, and they were coming up, blowing up baits on the surface water. In like 6 foot of water. Like
that's what I do at my dock.
I was like,
I do my well, dude. They're coming out of the
catching
water.
them. We ended up getting like a 22-inch trout.
Yeah.
But it was almost like, because I saw the trout. Like, I went over a couple potholes, and I was like, oh, there's trout laid up in here. Yeah. And so we spun back around, and I started chumming. I'm seeing them blow up. I'm like, get ready, y'all. It's about to be game on. Yeah. And it was like Mega Cat Central. Yeah. And we caught a few.
Right after he says that.
They get more aggressive than all the other fish.
They get fired up, and you'll get one on. I mean, if they were a sport fish, dude, maybe that's, hey, we've turned to mackerel, we've turned to snapper.
You can't eat catfish.
I'm just saying, man. Like, could you imagine, like...
If that's the case, just go to my house every day in the summer. Dude, it's on fire.
You're catching one, and 3 of them are just smoking in with him, dude, trying to eat the cork and everything else.
When I take a dip net of bait at my dock, like, it's like... I mean, they're like on top, like fighting over the baits. Like
floaters.
Oh my God, it's crazy.
Floaters.
I got 2 dock lights underwater, and they do nothing but attract catfish in the summer. The snook move in the winter, but them snook are gone. I thought, man, if I kind of like your dock, like you keep dumping bait every day, the lights are on, like gonna create something to where these fish stay. No. I've been there a year and a half.
I think the river's the X factor, though. Is it? They'll transition in and out of there.
They're not. I can tell you this: they're not on my dock because I'm there every day. And I
think you'd see a difference too if you cleaned more fish at your dock, like actually
more catfish.
No. Cleaned more. If you did your filleting.
I tell you, for a month I was bringing my carcasses home on purpose and throwing them there.
Throwing them there and nothing.
Catfish.
Just bigger catfish.
Just bigger catfish.
Well, dude, man, if we ever bring back the Alafai River Catfish Tournament.
Remember that thing?
They're not huge, though.
Great. I think we need to put heads together, dude, and bring that back.
I was just talking to some customers about that because somebody asked me, how big do these things get?
Beagle.
I was like, well.
Beagle would be the one to head that up. I could see him with a microphone.
I've been begging him for years to bring back.
Jimmy, bring it back.
Megan, you got to ask Megan.
Oh, my God. Yeah, Megan's the boss.
Megan, we need the Alafai River Catfish Tournament back.
Oh, my God. But Jimmy's got to be up there announcing it. Yeah, he would be the game changer. Can you see him up there with a microphone?
Drunk.
Yeah. No. He might have a little buzz. It'd be good. That'd be classic. Well, guys, we've got to wrap it up. I think we've been an hour.
It is, man. We have been jabbering on, boys.
Yep. Well, we'll be back next week. Same time, same place.
That's it, man.
That's it.
Guys, we appreciate it. You've been watching Tampa Fishing Outfitters Live Fishing Report. Myself, Captain Travis, Captain James, Captain Jason. See you next week.
All right, guys. See you next